The violence that once plagued Northern Ireland is these days represented by murals across Belfast. The sectarian war of many years ago killed over 3,500 people, but the current political stalemate means there's a concern of dark days returning. It was a brutal conflict between the unionist community wanting to stay part of Britain and nationalists who believed Ireland should be a united country. The Good Friday Agreement in the late 1990s brought an end to the conflict and provided stability until the power sharing broke down a few months ago.
There's been 20 years of calm and political cooperation between the two main parties here. The Democratic Unionist Party, who of course are very pro-British, and Sinn Féin, who one day would like a united Ireland. But the political apple cart has been well and truly upset by the Brexit vote. A familiar story.
Northern Ireland voted overwhelmingly to stay within Europe, but now finds itself facing life outside the European Union. The Brexit vote has gifted the Sinn Féin party an unexpected opportunity. They're calling for a border poll, a vote locally on whether to join the Republic of Ireland, which would mean staying in the EU.
The central fault line in Irish politics and society is the continued existence of the partition of the island of Ireland. It brings forward the argument very strongly that the best way to organise Irish society is on the basis of Irish unity.
Sinn Féin had large gains in the last local elections a few weeks ago and now have just one less seat than the Democratic Unionist Party. They launched their manifesto in the town of Antrim, 20 kilometres outside of Belfast.
I think that unionists realise that the narrow margin between ourselves and Sinn Féin is too close for comfort, and they have realised that they must coalesce around the largest unionist party. We are that largest party in Northern Ireland, and therefore put to rest this notion that there's going to be a referenda on the border.
The dockyards and slipways in Belfast that launched the Titanic are now rejuvenated as restaurants and museums. No matter which direction the political process takes, this is a place that knows how to reinvent itself and may have to do so again. Francis Collings, TRT World, in Northern Ireland.
And the leaders of the two main parties gave their closing arguments to the public.
And there's one simple fact that nobody should forget, which is that if we lose just 6 seats, the government loses its majority. And that would mean that coalition of chaos with Labour, the Lib Dems and the SNP. It would mean Jeremy Corbyn in number 10, John McDonnell at the Treasury, and what a combination that would be. We know they would wreck our economy, and what we also know with Labour is that it's ordinary working people who always pay the price.
By voting Labour, by electing Labour MPs tomorrow, you're electing a government that's going to challenge the economic narrative that we've had in this country for the past 7 years. What has actually happened has been that the richest pay less in tax. Corporations have seen their tax rate fall from 28 pence down to well below 20 pence, and under this government set to fall further.
Joining me now from London is Kallum Pickering. He's the UK economist at Berenberg Bank. Kallum, thanks so much for being on Money Talks again. Some scathing comments there from the two main candidates. How are people in the city taking all of this, and how's it having an effect on stocks and currencies?
Well, I mean, mostly people tend to look at the FTSE 100 to judge how the UK economy is doing. It's actually not a very good gauge. Say 2/3 of all earnings come from non-UK. So you get this odd relationship where when sterling goes down, then the FTSE goes up. And that's really what markets are kind of thinking about. If we get an outcome tomorrow which creates more uncertainty, say a coalition government or a small majority for either of the major parties, Labour or the Conservatives, that would probably negative for sterling, and slightly weirdly, it would probably be positive for the FTSE 100. But the base case remains that the Conservatives will win. It's just a question of by how much. Will they increase their majority or will they decrease their majority? That's really the hair that the market is trying to split.
Now, as we go into this election, some news out today on the housing market. Looks like rental prices in the UK falling for the first time since 2009, following home sales prices as well on the way down. How is all of this playing on the markets with just hours to go before polling starts?
I don't think the economic data will have much of an impact. In fact, what we might see is the good economic performance in the last 12 months may actually embolden a few voters just to stick with the Conservatives because they worry less about the long-term consequences of Brexit. Whilst I don't agree with that, that seems to be the sentiment I'm seeing. If I take a look at the housing market specifically, if house prices in the UK were to fall, then as an economist, I would be worried about the economic outlook. For every 10 percentage point rise or fall in house prices, the economy roughly grows by about 2.5%, driven mainly by consumers feeling more or less wealthy and spending as such. But I don't see a major risk of house prices falling. If house prices really start to slow down, then what we'll see is home builders will cut back supply in order to preserve a wedge of excess demand. So it's a concern, but I'm not worried too much about it just yet, and I don't think the market is yet either.
Fantastic analysis. Kallum Pickering, Berenberg Bank in London. Thank you ever so much.